Okay, let me show you what I've got here. This is a tool that that I have is kind of fancy and all that and everything. Let me show you what it looks like in the box. There's some of the other hardware. You can find this rear disc brake tool off of like an Amazon, kind of cheap. Let me show you another really cheap but not very effective tool, but can be used in a pinch. This thing kind of reminds me of the character from the movie Hellraiser with the pinhead, because it's got the little thing, and this thing can be very aggravating and it'll make you want to throw it across the room, but it is functional. You would select the necessary size. Let me show you. You can see that the caliper has a cross section in it, and if you see your emergency brake cable going into the back of this thing, then there's a good chance that this thing's going to have to be pressed or depressed in this manner. But this little tool right here you'd find the right set of pins that would kind of like lock into that little groove right there, but there's not a lot of room to turn this thing, so you would have to get a pair of pliers and grip the outside of this and turn this clockwise and have somebody help you push in to try to get it in enough to try to use this tool. So that's why this thing is really handy. And you can buy several different makes of these tools. You can buy a real basic kit for like, really cheap, or you can get a little bit more involved, and this is handy for me. And this will go in there and allow me to lock that in, and then I can turn this outside piece. Let me show you. I can turn this inside piece like this, and then be able to turn this or hold this still, and this would push that in. You see that going in, and I'll show you how the process works. Okay. All right. So we've got this caliper here that we're going to be working with. And I've had to use a bolt and bolt it back to the mounting bracket just to hold it steady. But we'll see if I can get it to turn in a conventional method, just normally by locking this tool in there. Sometimes these things aren't stuck that bad. We're going to if not, you can take a pair of channel lock and get it started by turning it, getting it broke loose. So here we go. To show you this method, just in case, I've got a pair of channel locks. I'm going to open them up to the desired thing, and I'm going to turn clockwise a little bit and see if I can't get it to break loose first. That helps. So we're turning it clockwise, and I've got it to move some. Okay, and then put in our tool. Get this thing back. They ran these brakes out pretty good. All right, that like that right there. And then let's see if you can. See if you can get a visual. You see what I've got going on here? And then this is going to turn clockwise while holding this steady, and this is going to press in and turn this piston at the same time. Okay. Flashlight. Engage, go flashlight. Go get that flashlight. See what I got here? Okay, here we go. It's kind of like real time too. Alrighty, here we are. Let's see how much trouble this is going to give me. These things can be quite cumbersome. Find a way to lock it in somewhere. And we are moving. Good deal. I have to sort of pull my. It's really stuck. Not easy to do. Is even with the tool, it's a little bit cumbersome. You have to make sure that the e-brake is back all the way. If it's not back, if it's not fully retracted, you're going to have a lot of trouble. And I think it's fully retracted, but I'm going to take a second and just look real quick, and then I'm going to keep fighting this. I'm going to use this tool, and I'm going to have to probably lock this in. We'll see, but I'll be turning this clockwise and allowing this to push in while holding that steady. So that's what we're going to do. Let me just check this e-brake. So I did check the e-brake, and it's in all the way. I even took a pair of pliers and put them on the back of the cable retractor and just made sure it was pulled back all the way. So we're just going to continue to fight this in, and it'll go. It's moving slowly. And the more you go in with it, the better it'll do. I'm constantly adjusting. I'm just coming in, it's going in. You can kind of, let me see here. I hope you're getting it in camera there. My apologies, but basically I've got to hold it up here where it's locked in on the sway bar and the lower control arm. But it's going in. And I'm going to show you a very, very, very important detail once you get this thing retracted. Something that a lot of people don't know, and it's often overlooked at big garages too. Comes in with, you'd be surprised some of the things I've seen from some of your leading competitors that are done improperly. Now, let me show you. Flip this camera around. All right, so notice that the caliper piston is retracted all the way. Notice that we're not exactly lined up, centered up. And what I mean by that is, if you take a look, you can see through the caliper that there's a slot right here. See my fingers coming through there? Well, eyeball this. You need to make sure that this piece, that this right here is centered up with this hole. You want this to be down. And the reason why is because the back of the brake pad has a tab. You see that tab right there that's sticking at the top? If this line isn't perfectly straight up and down, when you place the caliper on, it's going to be touching one of these pads right here, and that's going to cause the piston of the caliper piston to become sideways. It's going to push it sideways and get jammed in there and cause a really weird brake noise that comes in under light braking because the pad chatters, because the pad is trying to go in at an angle and it's binding up this piston right here. So now that I've got this retracted all the way, I'm going to use the tool without the guard on it, without the part, just by itself, and I'm going to use it to move the piston in a way that is lined up perfectly. Okay, we're doing this all real time. So the camera guy, you're going to see I've got just the tool by itself. It's just the piece that touches it. And it's okay to turn it backwards if it won't go forward any. But I'm not pressing in, so it shouldn't be a problem. I should be able to turn it clockwise, I mean. We're just about there. And that's, oh, I went too far. And basically, too, it doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt to leave both wheels off. And if you have to, put a lug nut on your stud right here and then push the brakes and go back with a pin light and look and make sure that piston stayed lined up with that line, because that's very important. That's the most important part about doing these rear brakes is that. And of course I want to go too far either way. I think I've got it centered up pretty good. It's just you'd have to eyeball it, and like I say, once you get it in all the way, then you'll double check. I'll take a second and double check. And it looks like we're pretty well centered up now. Let me show you. You see that right there? Okay, now we're centered up. We're ready to put the brake pads on. And we've got to put our keepers back on here, and then the little anti-squeal piece that snaps in the top of the caliper. I'll show you that real quick. This little piece was already out when they brought me the car, because a customer was trying to do this themselves. Totally understandable. Simple rear brake job, but that basically they'll snap in. You'll see a spot at the top where that kind of snaps in, and I'll have to probably get my little screwdriver to do that. So to keep from the video being real long, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the camera here, because that's the most important aspect of this job. You don't have to take that little piece out. And then one other thing, always remove these right here and use the proper brake grease. I'm going to show you that real quick. This is the caliper mounting pin. That is my cat's eye puppy face, because we stay up all the time doing stuff. Okay, this right here is your grease that you'd use for your rear brakes on these caliper pins. You don't put them on this, because brake grease gets on your brake rotor, and then it causes a squeal because it gets packed in between the pads, little porous little surfaces. So the purpose for this brake grease is for these caliper pins. And you're like, well, I'll just use regular grease. I'm fine with that. No. The rubber on your grommets is not compatible with the petroleum-based product that's used in wheel bearing grease. And neither are some of the caliper mounting pins that have a piece of rubber on them. This one may or not. This one does not, but some of your caliper mounting pins will have a piece of rubber at the very tip for an anti-squeal. Well, that rubber is not compatible with the petroleum-based grease, and you will cause swelling and abnormalities to that rubber, which will cause serious brake problems later on. Trust me, I've been there 100 times. I take this stuff apart and have to clean that out and then get new pin grommet kits and all that fancy stuff. So always use an approved brake grease for the rubber that's on these high temperature rubber that's used on this stuff. So that's another really big important aspect of this job. Without these pins being free, you get a really weird braking problem, and it will happen if you don't keep these things greased. It's already starting to rust a little bit and starting to deteriorate, so we're going to take a rag and wipe this off and just re-grease and put that back in, and then you'll have a really good, well done brake job. So now I'll cut the camera again. We'll get that stuff done. We'll put it together and I'll show you. Yeah, So, by the way, this is what a brake pad looks like when it's not properly aligned with the line on the, with that part I was just showing you on a brake caliper. I was going to upload the video, then I seen this and said, whoa, I better add that to it. Yep. And you can see the pad is worn very in just terrible. It's not flat at all, and that causes a weird noise the whole time and other things. And a brake pedal that feels funny. If you don't have this lined up properly, your brake pedal will feel spongy because everything's flexing and moving. It isn't properly lined up with this brake pad. And another thing, I had to rotate the tires. Brakes are down on the front. These pins, if they're not free and can't move, they'll cause the same issue where the brake pad wears really funny, and you'll have a funny pedal, real spongy pedal, and or almost like a situation where the brakes sort of stick a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with the calipers or hoses. So it's imperative that these things can move freely and are with the proper brake grease, and that these pads with these pins are lined up with that slot in the piston. Okay, I wanted to add that to the video. So we're putting our little I guess you want to call your pad insulators. These are kind of important right here, that they need to be on, because a lot of the brake pads where it goes in at, there'll be a little bit of space and you'll hear the brake pads rattle. I guess they call them anti-rattle clips, whatever technical name is for that. Just want to be sure I've got them up in there. And then there's people that put brake spray on the back of these. I guess you can do that. I've done that before. Either way, when you're using old rotors like this, you have a chance of a squeal that comes out because they don't cut the pads like a new rotor does. So at this point, we're just to keep the mess down, remember that we're lining this up with that tab on the inside pad. The inside pad typically has your squealer on it. And I like to put the squealer in a certain direction. So I think that what we'll do is, to get this thing to really pop off and squeal, we want that squealer to aim up instead of down. Because you'll notice, look at this, the pads are different. I'm going to show you this real quick. If I put this pad in, that's going to put that anti-squealer down, which would then put the squealer right up against this, which probably wouldn't let it vibrate a lot. It doesn't matter in a sense of how the brakes will function, but if you want your squealer to work right, I typically want to put it in the normal form of rotation so you hear it forward. So I'll have this squealer aiming up. Just the same thing on the front. If you were to the front and you switch sides, then this other pad would work. So we're going to put that in here like this. Okay, that's good. Now, like I say, your outside pad's typically different. It doesn't have the tab on it. I have seen this happen before where there's no tab and it still works, but that's very rare. Most of the time, the pad, when it's lined, the tab keeps this piston from turning, so whenever you use the e-brake, you get a full e-brake. Otherwise, if the piston turns, instead of it locking in, then your worm gear doesn't work to push the piston out manually for the e-brake. FYI for you guys. That's why you have to rotate these things to turn them in, because you're rolling against a roller bearing that is up against a worm gear. When you move it, the roller bearing allows it to go in. You'd have to take the caliper apart for me to fully explain it to you, but just lean into this, guys. So now we're going to go ahead. We've got our pins all nice and cleaned up, and I'll put the 2 bolts down somewhere. Here, we're going to replace we're just going to replace the caliper back onto its original mounting place. And before I put the wheel on, I'm going to tighten this down, of course, and then I'm going to go out. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to hit the brake, and I'm going to bring I'm going to expand the piston on the caliper, and then make sure that, look through this hole on the inside back. I'll show you. Flashlight, sir. Flashlight. On the inside back right here, there's a hole. I'll be able to look. It's hard to do it on camera, but you'll be able to look through there and you'll see the piston actually come out and contact the brake pad, and you'll make sure that your little line is lined up with the caliper. I'm sorry, the brake pad. Okay? Let me get this buttoned up and we'll go ahead and knock it out, and then we'll be right back. All right, guys, that works. So we've got that side done. That's basically, the other side is the same way. You just need to be careful to make sure that several key factors. You get the tool that turns that thing in. Make sure it's lined up properly with the pin on the back of the caliper. And then also, last but not least, always use the right grease when it comes to lubricating brake parts. It's very important that you do that. So we're going to go ahead and knock the other side out. I'm going to rotate tires on that side. We're going to call the customer. It's going to be a done deal. We're going to ride out. Guys, thank you for tuning in to Will Fix It team. You guys are awesome. Yeah.